So what did the MPS We Trust guys have to say about us or staff?
As I mentioned earlier, we somehow prepared a couple of questions over. And first one is, how did you feel about this person who reviewed
Dan Stapleton?
Yeah.
Also, that's a good point as well. I forgot to mention. So in last week's episode, we discussed the 7 out of 10 situation with IGN, and we were saying how it seemed a bit disingenuous and stuff. This is before I even did the research on Dan Stapleton. Apparently, Dan Stapleton has a lot of tweets about how he hates Xbox and how he thinks the takeover with Bethesda was a bad idea, and how no one should be. It just needs to get a lot of negative stuff about Bethesda, a lot of negative stuff about Xbox. So I didn't even realize how much of his bias he had before, we were recording last week. So I found out even more since then, and then I asked those guys. So just a little bit of context needed there, because the Dan Stapleton doesn't look the best when you look at his tweet history. Just put it that way. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically the question was that how you feel about, is it Dave or some sort?
Dan Stapleton. Dan.
Yeah.
From IGN.
Yeah, there was a question asking that, how would you feel about how he's been against Xbox and made a lot of tweets that may have influenced his review? And you asked another question how would you feel if Spider-Man 2 received 6 or 7 by a IGN of some sort?
If basically if there's an Xbox, somebody who was like, Sony sucks, Spider-Man sucks, and then they get the Spider-Man review and then give it a 7, what would you do? To me, that seems like a fair question, because it does seem... excuse me. See, there's the cough. Well, I say that. Yeah, it's just... I'm not usually one who, I don't like wearing a tinfoil hat and being like, oh, everyone's out to get Xbox, media bias, all this stuff. But this guy does literally seem very biased towards... anti-Xbox from what I've read and stuff about him. It does seem like he is a bit have a bias, which is weird. Why would you pick this guy to do it? And I also feel like if you've got a massive company and you have 10 people playing the game, why don't you have more than one person reviewing it and have an aggregate score instead of having one person who could literally tank the whole review process? It doesn't make sense to me personally, but there you go. Anyway,
actually, I was trying to reread the video, and I only did it by a bit of an ear while I'm playing Starfield. So if I brought up anything that is not correct, then please, if any of you from PSP Trust guys, and you feel as if I didn't get the message right, let us know in the comments, and I'll be happy to like address that and even send an apology if I get it wrong. But first off, before we get to the questions, they said that they agree with the Starfield being 7 out of 10 and feels as if everyone's like getting really worked up about the reviews, that they seem to not accept the fact that these reviews are just mere opinions. Like, if you have things that are like low scores or anything like that, then as long as you enjoy it, then that's pretty much nothing. So, what do you think?
Yes and no. If it's just opinions, they're fair, but it's just like, this guy's representing one of the biggest media companies in the world, IGN, right? And then GameSpot also gave it a 7, which made no sense to me. They're like, so they represented hundreds of people, and their opinion, they know how important their opinion is. The fact to me is that they know if they gave it a 9 or they gave it an 8, the feedback wouldn't be the same. They know that giving it a 7 is what has caused like massive like traction to their website. This is literally just them trying to get attention, essentially. I don't believe this is his opinion. I honestly think this is just him trying to get attention, because there's so many games out there that they've given higher than a 7, an 8 or a 9 and stuff like that, and they've been absolutely dog shit awful games. And then like it's the same guy who gave Watch Dog Legion an 8 out of 10. Like that, like you're saying Watch Dog Legions is better than this. It does, like, there's so many games if you compare the like in theory, a 7 should be a good score, but we all know in the game industry, a 7 is a bad score. Like, they only score, they only games. If a game works on day one, it basically gets a 7, 8, 9, or a 10. It doesn't get anything lower than that, unless it's like broken, usually. And the fact that this is like a really well designed game that's not very glitchy or buggy, and the only bugs I've experienced have just been funny bugs. Like, I don't see how you could give it a 7 personally, but there you go. And I know it's opinion, but I think this guy has already shown he has like an agenda against Xbox and Starfield before he even played the game, so it just seemed a bit unfair that this is the guy reviewing it. I don't personally, and I know I'm an Xbox fanboy, so I would say all this, but you know, I think I'm hoping I would feel the same way if it happened to a game that I liked. I'm hoping I would react the same way if it happened to a game on PlayStation, a game that I didn't care about. Like, if you know, I don't like. I'm not a huge fan of God of War, but it got a 10 out of 10, and I understand why it got a 10 out of 10. So you know, like that's the same kind of logic I'm going with here. Like, I can understand why. Like, you don't have to personally like a game to understand why it gets a certain score. So I don't know. I personally, I think they literally picked a 7 out of 10 just to get clicks. Essentially, I think it was just done to get to get people's attention, and it's pretty sad, honestly.
Well, I finally caught up with the responses to the questions, and also I have something that proves to be more harsher than the IGN review, but we get to that soon. It depends if we were to discuss it after we deal with it in PS We Trust Guys on the news. But they do actually have the response to say about Stan Stapleton and the anti-Xbox tweets. And they said, which I can guess from the subtitles, because I really want to respect in PS We Trust Guys by giving out some accurate information from them. Says here, throwing shade at Dan Stapleton or any reviewer who doesn't agree with what they got is being pretty petty, if I'm honest with you, and we're going to see it for Sony 100 because people will get copies of games and they will have a completely opinion to myself on it, but I'm not going to again say I'm not going to publicly shame them. There are times where you're white to Christian. For example, there's a time on the podcast before I remember where we were calling out Greg Miller because he was on Think of Us a Village and talking about, and how he has no experience with survival horror. And it just goes into another monologue there.
All right, okay. So, I'm allowed to criticize someone. I mean, that's I don't understand the logic of that one. I don't understand okay, but it's okay. So I don't really know how to unpack that one. So the guy is clearly unprofessional. He said all this stuff beforehand. It's like it's okay to. It's not okay to be biased, but if it's all right, if you're going to be biased, at least be honest about your biases going into something, right? I'm clearly an Xbox guy and a Nintendo guy and all that. So if we go into a Spider-Man review and then I go, it's a 2 out of 10, it's a load of shit, I'd be like, but bear in mind, I'm an Xbox guy. Like that's the logic the fact that this guy is like, Xbox is awful, they shouldn't be buying companies, Bethesda should be left alone, blah, blah, blah. Like all this, like so many negative things about the game before you even played it. You should have I've put I don't know. I feel like they should have had someone who was a bit more like neutral. This guy is clearly not a neutral party, and he represents a massive company. So
he also said that I say that's up to Dan himself and his impression of the game, but I don't think his opinion should be weighed any lower than anybody else just because he feels differently about it. It's ridiculous. I don't think that's questioning his opinion with tweeting anti-Xbox and anti-Bethesda tweets in 2020. We were all tweeting anti-Xbox stuff back then because buying Bethesda was pretty bad, and it's just like with them buying another big publisher with Activision. Does that mean that when we review Modern Warfare 3, we're now, because we've spoken loads of bullshit on this, that then all of a sudden we're going to come up with 6s, 7s. No, because any review worth their weight, and especially if you're in IGN, the most prestigious kind of game review site on the internet, you can distance that, which is different from the product that's in front of you. And I think having the opinion that this has been a target attack is just fanboy speak. You pure fanboy speak.
Wow. Okay. So that's just wrong, but okay. I mean, he should be able to remove himself from it, but clearly he hasn't. Like, he's literally giving it like if every single review was like a 7 out of 10, or like the majority of them, I would understand it. But he's literally the one out of like everyone. Like there's like IGN, IGN like UK, IGN like Japan, IGN Africa. I don't know. There's like loads of different. They're all giving it 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10s.
Exactly.
And then there's other websites that are all giving it 9 out of 10s and 8 out of 10. This is the one guy, apart from the guy at GameSpot and Sterling. I can't remember her name now.
Oh, you mean
Jim
Stephanie Sterling?
Definitely, yeah, okay.
We'll mention this review.
Negative. Those are the only negative reviews I've seen, really. And I was like, are you entitled to have an opinion? I just don't think. I just think the 7 out of 10 is bullshit. Like review, to be perfectly honest.
But yeah,
and I would feel the same way if it was a Sony game. And the fact that they think that it's a fanboy thing is annoying to me, because I would literally feel the same way if it was a Sony game that was good.
Yeah, there's another one. There's another person from there who said on this podcast, I'm sure you would figure out who it is by watching it. It's not up there right now. Check it out. It's a good episode. But it says here, I'm assuming that Lewis and the Xbox podcast has gone back and watched a few reviews from Dan's sort of back catalogue over than IGN. Why does he care what he has to say? Why does it matter that Dan has come up with this review? Why should it matter him? Because he already has kind of stated that he doesn't agree with Dan's standpoint on a lot of things. So why did you care about this one? It's just mad. And to start giving Dan heat, and I'm not saying Lewis has or the Xbox podcast has, but there's been people in the community going out and overstepping that mark with Dan, and it's giving him some rubbish on Twitter, and it just crosses the line for me.
I mean, I wouldn't obviously say it's like sending threats or anything. Obviously, it's his opinion. I think his opinion is false, and it literally is just inflammatory, basically. I just think this is an inflammatory review and is literally just done to try and get clicks, which is what I've said multiple times. That's why it just feels disingenuous. That's what annoys me more than anything, to be perfectly honest. It's like, how can we get everyone to watch the IGN review? If you give it a 9 out of 10, no one's going to care. They're just going to go, oh, cool, 9 out of 10, we'll move on with our lives. Give it a 7, everyone's just going to kick off, and we're going to get loads of traffic on our website. That's what I feel it is. I think it is just a disingenuous thing, and I also feel like there is some kind of bias towards Xbox, and I don't know why. It's weird to me. It's just weird.
Well,
to me
seeing that we are already talking about this IGN review, and to be honest, well done. We brought this huge subject up front, but that's not the topic of the week.
Got 2 episodes.
Yeah,
they got 2 episodes. They got 2 episodes out of us. 2 rants out of me.
Yes.
Well done, and it's in PS3 First rant as well.
But the IGN. One last thing, yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, because you said, why does Lewis care about this review? It's like, because it completely destroys the Metacritic, and I want to win Metacritic Fantasy League against you. This annoys me. This totally tanked my funny score. How dare you, Dan Stapleton, ruin my Fantasy Critic? How dare you? And also, it's just I just find it annoying more than anything. It's just, I just find it disingenuous, and I think it's just like, it's not nice for the hundreds of people who are working in Bethesda just to get a negative review, just so they can get people to watch his article. I just think that's just sad to me. They can't just give someone credit for making a good video game. I just think it's sad, personally, to me.
Thank you for listening to the X Marks the Box podcast. Follow us at X Marks Box on Twitter or X Marks the Box on YouTube. and follow us on all audio podcast services. Thanks for listening.